The Nore Mutiny. Mutiny started at Spithead, an anchorage off the Isle of Wight, on the 16th of April 1797, when sailors aboard ships refused to obey orders. During the 18th century, a sailor's lot was not a happy one. The pay of Royal Navy sailors had not increased for over 100 years. Men spent long times at sea, were often impressed, and rations were always short. The sailors at Spithead protested at the living conditions aboard Royal Naval vessels, demanded a pay rise, better food, and more shore leave. At Spithead, discipline and respect for the officers was upheld. On the 12th of May 1797, encouraged by the outcome at Spithead, mutiny broke out at the Nore off Sheerness. At the Nore, HMS Sandwich had the worst living conditions of any warship. It was overcrowded and a breeding ground for discontentment. The crew of HMS Sandwich seized control of their ship. Richard Parker, an educated man and former officer, was elected as president of the Delegates of the fleet. At the Nore, the mutineers demanded pardons and increased pay, but became more political. They demanded the king dissolve Parliament and make immediate peace with France. They blockaded London and stopped trade in and out of the port. With flags flying and a band playing God Save the King preceding them, the mutineers, armed with pistols and cutlasses, paraded through Sheerness Garrison and Bluetown to their headquarters at Chequers Inn. Pardons and the same conditions already in place at Spithead were offered to the Nore mutineers. The mutineers rejected the offer, and the people of Sheerness, many of whom had supported the mutiny, turned against them. The 2,000 troops in the garrison under Sir Charles Grey were given orders to load their guns and fire on boats attempting to go out to the fleet. Plans were made by the leaders to take their ships to France, which turned most English sailors against the mutiny. When Richard Parker signalled the ships to sail to France, all refused to move. The frigate Clyde slipped her cable and came into Sheerness Harbour. Over the following days, most ships returned to Sheerness and surrendered. As they did so, they came under fire from the mutineers. Captain Bligh was captain of HMS Director, which was the last ship to surrender. Remarkably, in wake of mutiny on the Bounty, Bligh strove to avoid any of his crew being court-martialed. Richard Parker was tried for treason and sentenced to death. He was returned to HMS Sandwich, where a noose was placed around his neck. He drank a glass of wine, prayed, and said, "I'm ready." His body hung for half an hour before it was cut down, wrapped in canvas, and taken to Sheerness Garrison, where it was buried. In the early hours of the following morning, Richard Parker's wife, with several others, dug up his body and took it to London, where crowds gathered to see it. He was later buried at St Mary Matfelon Church, Whitechapel. 29 of the ringleaders of the mutiny were hung. Many others were given up to 400 lashes, imprisoned or transported to Australia. The Nore Mutiny at Sheerness, 1797.